Ladies and gentlemen, the President, CEO, and founder of Emerald Data Solutions, Ari Ioannides.
Thank you for coming to eGovLIVE this year. I can't believe it's our 13th year. How many people were here year one? Anybody? Nobody? Okay, somebody? No, okay. So they were just raising my hand to make me feel good. There were, I think, 12 people, so we're doing a little bit better. And I guess the fun starts today. What we call yesterday the pre-conference, because that's school, right? You're learning more about board docs. And today we're actually here, and we're going to start having a little fun. Is anybody excited about seeing Jason Alexander tonight? Right? He's going to play that piano over there. No, he will. It's pretty exciting. Who said, yeah, right? So we asked him, artists have writers, right? And a writer is all the stuff they want. And what he wanted was actually very basic. It wasn't all that tough. But he said he wanted a piano. And when we were on the phone with him, what kind of piano? He goes, you know, I'm not that kind of pianist. I really don't care. So we ordered just any kind of matte black piano. It's a Steinway. I'm like, well, he'll be impressed now. So can I get slides, guys? Please? I'm still seeing my name up there spelled correctly, which is really rare. Is this not working? There it is. Isn't that better? So, you know, we can all kind of tell the future, right? I mean, you know, a couple minutes from now, I'm going to be on the stage talking. And there's a pretty good, high probability that we're going to be back in this room tonight watching a party. Now, if I hold out my phone like this, right, and I let go, what's going to happen for sure? It's going to drop. That we know for sure. Now, what might happen? We don't know for sure. It may break. We want to test that out real quick? All right, so the phone did indeed drop. You're all really good at telling the future. But it did not break. Okay? And that's good, right? And the difference in that is, you know, some things you know for sure, right? They're going to happen. That's a cause and effect. And some things there's a pretty good probability that are happening. So every year I used to get up and give a lot of statistics about what's happened. Well, I know there's a pretty good probability that if we provide the kind of tech support where you can pick up the phone and you can reach somebody and speak with them and ask them a question and they answer it, that news is going to get around. That's kind of a high degree of tech support. I have a pretty good idea that if everyone who signs up for board docs, we send somebody out in person to train you, that there's a pretty good probability that you guys will keep using the system and the word will get out and more folks will use it. I have a pretty good idea that if we write really great software and the servers stay up and they're ultra fast, then more and more people are going to sign up. And it's worked because last year when I stood up in front of you, there were over 1,000 subscribers for board docs, and subscribers are organizations. So that's a town or a county or a board of ed or a nonprofit or, you know, sometimes a bank. You know, anyone who has a board can use it. And that's pretty good. I mean, after 11 or so years of doing it, but I'm standing in front of you now with a new number. Yeah, that's a wow number. So there's a pretty good probability that if you hire the best team and have the best people to deliver what is not software but is a service, that number will continue to grow. And I want to give you guys all a big round of applause for helping make that happen because you're spreading the word. So that's probability. And you saw just a few minutes ago that we all, none of us, anybody in here a physicist? Anybody? You never know. We used to have an ad a long time ago that said board docs is not rocket science. And we had a student up there with a rocket. And a guy came up to us at an NSBA conference and went, I'm actually a rocket scientist. Can you imagine at a cocktail party? You know, what do you do? You know, oh, well, I run a nonprofit organization that helps children all over the world. Well, that's not rocket science, is it? And you keep doing that until you come up to somebody, well, what do you do for a living? I'm a brain surgeon. That's not rocket science, is it? No, it's brain surgery. Anyway, can you tell I didn't write a speech today? So the difference between those two things is causation and this correlation, right? Correlation means there's a chance something's going to happen. You're pretty sure, like if you wake up in the morning and the weatherman or the weatherwoman or the weather person, I'm trying to become better at this, comes on the TV or the radio or on your phone and says, this afternoon there's a chance of rain, 90% chance of rain. You're pretty sure it's going to rain, but you don't know for sure, right? But you do know it's going to get dark that night. Or you do know that if it is raining and you walk outside, you're going to get wet. So people often confuse correlation and causation, right? If you get sick and you had pork the night before, you're like, it's the pork. Yeah, I know that for sure. My stomach's upset. Could have been something else. A spider could have, crawled in your mouth at night. It happens. Look it up. See, you're going to Google that, and you're going to really freak out. Okay, so students attending private schools will receive a higher quality education, right? No? But everyone believes that. The media says it. Parents spend tens of thousands of dollars every year sending their students to private schools. It must be true. The test scores actually reflect that the test scores from private schools exceed the test scores from public schools. Anyone who's ever had their child in a private school will know they bring you in and they'll say, we just finished the standardized testing. I know Susie's in 4th grade, but we're going to compare you to 5th graders in public schools. She's in the, 75th percentile. The stay 9 is whatever. So they're making you feel good about it. And then when you're at your cocktail party or wherever, where does your daughter go to school? Well, she goes to Starwood Academy. Really? So it's got to be better, right? It's actually not. So, and I'm actually going to read this to you because it's small type and I'm getting old, so I have empathy for you. Once having accounted for the enrollment of higher socioeconomic students, they have money to send their children there in private schools, and considering other variables such as race, ethnicity, disability status, public school students on average outperform their peers in private schools. Right? Where did I get that? That came from 50 Myths and Lies That Threaten America's Public Schools. It's a book, you should read it. And that's a fact. So a lot of times when you hear something, you're like, oh, my child does better because they went to a private school. No, not necessarily. That's one of those causation things. It's actually not. And matter of fact, there's a lot of things that are counterintuitive in life that we're taught and we believe. Who's here from Virginia? Anybody? Okay. So Virginia has this great thing where they're like giving letter grades to schools, and if you don't pass certain criteria, they're not accrediting you anymore. And typically they're disadvantaged schools. So Gina Patton from the Virginia School Board Association was on a panel of people who said, all right, let's go to Fairfax County and let's measure the test results for just the disadvantaged schools that match the students from this school. So 100% free and reduced lunch, Fairfax County at this particular school, 5% free and reduced lunch. Well, let's compare the test scores from Fairfax and the test scores from this school that's all free and reduced. And the test scores from Fairfax, right, at that particular high-performing school are obviously going to be better for that group, right, than the one at the school who's all free and reduced, right? Obviously, no. So that's another thing where you say, okay, maybe the school's failing, maybe it's identified as being failing by the state, but it's really not. So there's often things, preconceived notions that people have that are just not true. Why am I wearing a hoodie? And drinking Dr. Pepper today. Well, I'm drinking Dr. Pepper because I could not find Mountain Dew. So everyone knows that coders are guys like me who wear hoodies and drink Dr. Pepper, right? I should have my glasses on, but I lost them. And that's exactly what guys code. They sit in dark rooms with mold growing around them with a half-eaten sandwich, right? Raise goats. That's an inside joke. Both of our programmers have goats. It's weird. Anyway, I had goats too, but I'm Greek. Greeks are supposed to have goats. All right. So there are some misconceptions about coders. First of all, you have to master mathematics to learn programming languages, right? You got to be great at STEM to be a programmer, right? No. I mean, if you know basic algebra, you're going to be a pretty good programmer. And even if you don't, like one of the first programs I had to write was for accounting, and I went to business school. I know some accounting. I just looked everything up as I was writing the software. And today you can look almost anything up. So unless you're having to write software that like launches a rocket or that tracks something like that or builds buildings or has something to do with engineering, you really don't need to be great with math to write software, right? As a matter of fact, if you're good at like problem solving or if you're a great writer, chances are you'll be a really good programmer, especially if you have some tenacity. So that's one of those fallacies. What else? You have to go to university to learn how to code. No. I mean, I did go to school, but I already knew how to code once I got there. And the classes I took, for me personally, were boring and not as challenging. I'd already written harder programs. Our lead programmer has a GED. You don't have to go to university to learn to code. I must be an adult to learn programming languages. Dead wrong. That's like saying, I need to be an adult to learn how to speak a language. It's actually harder to teach an adult a skill than it is a child. To learn the basics of code can start in preschool. And I'm not even going to say they could start in preschool. They should start in preschool. Learning the basics, the ABCs of coding, should start in elementary school. So if you have children at home, or if you're in charge of teaching children, it's important that they learn that early. I'm a woman, I can't code. That's bull. It's just crap. Women are better problem solvers. And studies have shown, and Grant Smith, who works for Emerald Data Solutions now, who's heading up our elementary school coding curriculum project, yes, we have such a thing, will tell you that in his research, he actually asks them to fill out surveys of children, that the gender gap is not that great. Now, if you flat out ask girls, because of what we do to girls as a society, do you want to go take a coding class? They'll go, yeah, not really, that's for the boys, But if you teach them all, the girls are typically better at it. So is anyone here old enough to remember the Apollo project? Okay, anybody remember Apollo 13, right? There was a movie about it. Back in the day, men built computers. It was hardware. It's guys. That's men's work. And they built the computers and they put them up there, and men don't write the code, that's filing. So all the coding was done by women. It was considered detailed, busy work. So the Apollo, the software that ran on that Apollo was all written by women. And when that system crashed, when the computer got overloaded, when Apollo 13 had that problem, they were in danger of losing the computer totally and not being able to get back home. So the women who wrote that software were smart enough. They said, there's a chance that too much information will come into this little computer, which happens to be less powerful than the phone I just dropped. There's a chance it'll become overwhelmed, and even though there's a backup, it needs we need to plan for that, and it should restart itself. And they wrote that little bit of code in there that saved those guys' lives. Geeky boys drinking Dr. Pepper didn't write that code. Young women wrote that code. And for us to perpetuate a myth that women can't program, it's crazy. It's just crazy. Same thing, I went to an inner city school. And to assume that people who come from different backgrounds can't code is crazy. In matter of fact, you can teach the skill of coding, let's say something like JavaScript, in a few years in high school, and those students can come out making a pretty good living without having to go to university, regardless of age, regardless of ethnicity, and regardless of income. And if we're all concerned about equalizing, about moving people from one class to another, it's one of the easiest ways to do that. Will everyone we teach become coders? No. Will everyone we teach English to write a novel? No. But they should all know it. It's that prevalent. I can only start making money once I've mastered programming. And we've all been taught that it takes tens of thousands of hours to learn how to master something. To play piano, guitar, paint, to become an artist. And it's true with programming. I mean, you really need to spend a lot of time doing it to become a master at it. But you can actually make pretty good money knowing how to do it and not being a master at it. I've never considered myself a master programmer, and I made pretty good money writing software. So once again, these are these misconceptions that we have that are kind of cause and effect. So I do want to talk to you about code. And I want you all to kind of start buying into this idea of coding. And there's a great documentary that was shown at the Tribeca Film Festival by Robin here, put it together. I met her a couple days ago. It's called Code, the Debugging of the Gender Gap. And, well, I'll tell you what. Can we run the trailer for that, Kevin? Nothing tells a story like video, right?
There will be 1.4 million jobs by 2020 in the computing-related fields. Less than 29% of them are going to be filled by Americans, and less than 3% of that 29% are going to be women.
I don't think software engineering is a meritocracy.
Being excellent or being good at your job isn't enough if you're a woman in tech.
The sort of phenomenon of the programmer has really interested me.
Programmer.
It's hard to encourage more women to come into an environment that will sexually harass them and not fund them.
As soon as a woman gets introduced, it's like blood in the water.
When companies started putting these full diversity disclosure reports out there, it became very obvious, wow, there really is a problem. This is something that we need to be trying to address.
Women were the pioneer programmers. They've been written out of history, unfortunately.
Grace Hopper came up with the concept of real programming languages.
Coding's magic.
I like coding because instead of us being consumers, we could be like a producer.
In the same way that everyone should know a little bit about law and everyone should know a little bit about economics, you probably should know a little bit about computer science.
Growing up, I was actually a system kid. I didn't know that I could learn how to code like so quickly.
The reason that there's a gap is actually related to some really real structural factors.
Girls aren't encouraged to pursue computer science. They're overlooked because, it's the boys that are good at science and it's the boys that are taking apart computers at age 9.
Most students have no exposure to programming.
Computer science should be a requirement in all public schools.
This is a Rosie the Riveter moment because the jobs are here and we don't have the workers to fill them.
For the digital revolution to truly be great, it can't just be for a certain set of people.
I'm hopeful because I think that the tech industry could move the fastest. If we see the problem, we can debug it.
This is our country, our cities, our communities, our children, our code.
Code. Debugging the gender gap.
So aside from the whole gender issue, which is huge, and I believe in strongly as a father of daughters, there were a couple great messages in that clip. One was, all children should be taught computer science, and specifically the ability to code. And I get up on the stage and I try and sell you guys on a lot of ideas, but this idea is critical to me because increasingly the world around us is surrounded by code. It's as prevalent as the language as English. And when I look around here and other coders look around, what we're seeing is an education system that's not teaching the prevalent language that exists in society. When I say it like that, it's a little scary, isn't it? We're not teaching the language that's prevalent in society that runs things. And it's another thing I heard was, well, we're teaching them engineering, we're teaching them sociology, we're teaching children math and science. Why aren't we teaching them how to code? Especially when it's so easy to do. So easy to do. So I mentioned Grant Smith earlier. Grant was at Avondale Elementary School District in a disadvantaged part of Arizona, where he left a very successful career because his goal in life or his goal at the moment, was to take students who may not be able to break the cycle of poverty and give them some tools to allow them to do that. This resonated with me, having gone to an inner city school and having been a recipient in that school of a pilot program that taught us how to code back in the 70s. Without that program in that high school, I would not be here today. University did not teach me how to code. I wrote the first couple versions of board docs. I would not have been able to do that or to afford the programmers to make that happen. You guys wouldn't be sitting here today if it wasn't for a pilot high school program where students taught each other how to code. Okay, so Grant ran a successful elementary school coding program in Avondale. We believe it's the first one to be done in the United States. So Grant and his team wrote a really nice curriculum guide. It's a couple hundred pages long. And what we did is we asked Grant to share that with us, and we took that to Park City School District, who happens to have what I believe is one of the best curriculum people in the country. Matter of fact, how many people get the magazine from ASCD? You know what that is? Okay. If you open up ASCD this month's issue to the last page, every year they highlighted it, every month they highlight an issue. I don't know how often it comes out. They highlight administrator. You will see Dr. Kathleen Einhorn on that last page. She's the person who does curriculum at Park City. Now, when I mentioned this to a friend of mine, the executive director of the Park City Education Foundation, Abby McNulty, when I mentioned that I wanted to run a program that would give away coding curriculum to students and I wanted to run a pilot at a school district, she said, oh, you should do it here in Park City. And the first thing out of my mouth was, I don't want to teach rich white kids how to program, which is true because they have the resources to do that anyway. Chances are they're going to go to university, they're going to learn a skill, they'll be just fine. If we're really going to use this as an equalizing factor, we need to teach it to students who normally wouldn't be able to have it. But I got a call from the superintendent, an email saying, look, we'll let Kathleen work on the curriculum for you. So to take that guide and actually build curriculum that allows us to run that through ages, certain ages, and to integrate it into your normal everyday classroom. So yes, you may have to teach it to young children as a special, but eventually it becomes integrated into the curriculum. That's what we're doing right now at Park City Schools, where in first grade, they're teaching children how to code in first grade. Next year, in every one of their elementary schools, just like they did in Avondale. Next year, kindergarten, first grade, second grade. And then we'll continue to do it all the way until it gets up to fifth grade. Elementary school coding. Some of those students will be able to pass the AP JavaScript exam as they enter middle school. Okay? So this is something that's fairly easy to do. And I know what you're saying. God, the professional development's going to be crazy. None of our teachers know how to code, right? How can they teach coding if they don't know how to code, right? Right? How many novelists do you have in elementary school or poets who are teaching your children English? I mean, they know English, but you guys all know English, right? You can teach ABCs. The basics of code are pretty simple. And most successful coders, even though they're exposed to it, not every student's going to take off with it, but some will start wanting to go deep and will go on their own. You can learn this stuff online right now. All the resources are there. Between Khan Academy and code.org, you can pretty much learn this on your own. All we're doing is guiding the students through that. And yeah, the professional development part is hard. That's why Grant's here. And Grant's going to help us develop that. And actually, what we're going to do is I'm going to put my money behind this. So Emerald Data Solutions is going to run a grant process, and you guys will be the first to get the email asking you to apply. We're looking for an inner city elementary school where we will send Grant to help do the professional development. We'll run this program for you. And we'll show you how it works. The end game for us is going to be to give the whole curriculum away. Nothing's plug and play, and just because it works in one school doesn't mean it's going to work in the other. But we're going to try and reduce as many barriers as possible to allowing students in the United States to learn how to code. Will they all become programmers? No. Will they be better at these skills? Problem solving, getting through, sticking through something. self-learning, self-direction, working in groups. All of those skills are important in coding, and they're all skills we would like to teach our students anyway. If only 10% of the students who are exposed to this decide to do it as a career, great. And like I said, everyone we teach math to doesn't end up being a rocket scientist. Everyone we teach English to doesn't go on to write it for a newspaper or maybe a blog these days. So I would encourage you to start thinking about this. You're going to be hearing more and more about it if you just Google it. It's really impressive. Folks who don't code don't get it. And there are so few people who can code that when I talk to programmers, they're like, oh yeah. Now, we've all heard that companies like Google, Microsoft, and even us are having a hard time finding really good programmers, right? Well, it's a little bit of a myth in that they're trying to find really good programmers who can work at a certain pay point. So, matter of fact, Google and Microsoft lay off a lot of programmers every year and replace them with people out of India because they'll work less for less money. Why can't those be American jobs? Why can't those be disadvantaged students who otherwise wouldn't be able to make a living at all? You know, you can't learn how to code in 6 weeks and be really good at it, but you can get a pretty decent job paying a lot more than, and let's do the math really quickly. Okay, so I go to school and I'm getting a degree in sociology. Marketing, let's do marketing. People coming out of school marketing, and I know because we hire folks, you can hire them for $45,000 a year. $60,000 is like the kind of the top end of what you would pay for a marketing person, right? And we were kidding, the folks who work in sports actually get paid less because I'm working for the Falcons, you know, or the Steelers. Wow, I work for 30 grand because I get to hang out with football players. Get to. So a coder, a pretty good coder, is easily going to make $50,000 a year right out of high school if they know how to JavaScript or if they know Ruby or one of the more prevalent coding languages. And honestly, the language I learned was APL. No one writes in APL anymore. It doesn't matter what you learn because those competencies, that procedural competency, works across just about any platform. So once you learn how to program, you can, it takes a while, but you can program just about any language you put your mind to. So you can become multilingual in coding. So let's do the math. I get out of high school, I get a job for 50 or 60. Student B who's getting a degree in marketing goes to ASU. Maybe they have a partial scholarship. They come out of school with student debt of what? Let's say 100 grand, maybe if they're lucky and they work. You know, I know my daughter is graduating next year. If I wasn't fortunate enough to be able to pay for her education, it would have been a couple $100,000. So you come out with that student debt. Student who came out of high school coding has already been making at least 50 or 60, right? Probably, if they're doing well, making more than that the year that the other student comes out of school and gets a job for 40 with all that debt. This student doesn't have debt. Move that up to age 30. Who's better off? And I'm not saying you shouldn't get a university education. As a matter of fact, the next gentleman who's going to talk to you, half of his career was getting that. You know, whenever you have that DR in front of your name, you've been to school for a long time, and that'll serve you well. And I'm not to say that in university you can't learn coding, but you don't have to. So keep that in mind when we are talking about anything that has to do with equalizing class, moving between pay grades, breaking the cycle of poverty, you know, equality with men and women. It's not a catch-all for everything, but it will solve a lot of problems, and it's something we can pretty easily do. And like I said, we're gonna put our money behind it. So you guys are very quiet out there. Am I being crazy? Raise your hand if you think that's at least worth considering. Okay, great. So we're going to say a couple kind of weird things here. Look, my phone still works. Let's see, did I get any text or anything? No. So I do want to highlight just a couple of sessions that are coming out. If that's okay, can I do that? Oh, do you like this? Do you want one? Really? Yeah. All right. I like it. Everybody's saying yes. And I will be sexist and say, yeah, mostly women. So as you leave today's session, there'll be tables out there. We have small, medium, large, and extra large.